Okay, today we're going to talk about major scales and how you build a major scale and then write it on the staff, starting on any note. The first thing you need to know is that major scales are made up of a pattern of half steps and whole steps. Following this pattern will make the major scale sound like a major scale. If you change it, it no longer sounds like a major scale. So you can pick any note on your keyboard or on your instrument, and if you follow this pattern of half steps and whole steps, your scale will sound like a major scale. Let's go ahead and try to build a major scale starting on middle C. The first step that we need to move is up a whole step. So a whole step up from middle C is going to be D. There's a whole step between those two notes. Next, we need to move up a whole step from D, and that will put us on E. Next, we need to move up a half step. When we move up a half step from E, we should naturally be on F. After that, we need another whole step up to G, another whole step, which will put us at A, another whole step, which will take us to B, and then lastly, one more half step, which brings us back to C. So when you're figuring out a major scale and building one starting on whatever note you start on, it's important to make sure that the whole steps, what we're talking about there is the space between notes. So the first whole step is in between your first note and your second note. Sometimes it can be confusing and you want to think that the step in between here is actually the second whole step, but just remember that you're starting your first whole step in between your first note and your second note, and you should be okay. Sometimes you'll want to start a scale that's going to require you to add in some accidentals. Let's do an example of this. We're going to start our scale on E. We're going to follow the same process that we did starting on C, except now we might have to add in some sharp signs. So, first step is between E and your second note, we need a whole step. That's going to put us to F sharp. Because you know that it's F sharp, you have to add a sharp sign to your F. Remember, sharp signs always go in front of the note that they apply to. All right, next we need another whole step from F sharp. So a whole step up from F sharp is going to be G sharp. Next we'll need a half step. A half step above G sharp is going to be A. Now we have a few more whole steps. From A to B is a whole step. From B to C sharp is a whole step. From C sharp to D sharp is a whole step. And lastly, we need one final half step from D sharp, which will put us up to E, right where we started. Keep in mind that your scale has to begin and end on the same note, and throughout this process, you're not allowed to repeat any note names at all, and we'll get to an example where that might come up in just a minute. Now let's try building a scale that starts on an accidental and see what happens then. Let's start on A flat. Remember, your accidental sign must go before the note that it applies to. So, we're starting on A flat, and we need to go up a whole step. A whole step above A flat is going to be B flat. Now we need to go up another whole step from B flat. Think carefully. A whole step above B flat is C. Now we need to go up a half step from C. you might be tempted to call this next note C sharp. However, you already used C, the letter name, in your scale, and you can't repeat letter names in your scale. So instead of calling it C sharp, we're going to call it D flat. C sharp and D flat are the same key, or the same note, but they have a different name. And the word for this is inharmonic. So C sharp and D flat are inharmonic notes. All right, moving on. We now need to go up a whole step from D flat, and that's going to put us at E flat. We need to go up a whole step from E flat, which will put us at F natural. We need to go up a whole step from F, which will put you on G. And then finally, we have one more half step, which will bring us to A flat. Again, you don't want to call this G sharp because you already used the letter G. Plus, you want to make sure that you start and end on the same note. So we're going to call that A flat, not G sharp. Finally, one last trick when you're dealing with scales in general. If you know that your scale is going to start on the note D, rather than wait to draw all your notes, you can simply draw your 8 notes starting on D up to the next D, like this. Then you go back and compare one note to the next and add accidentals where you need them. So for example, if you start on D and go up a whole step, that's E, so you're good. The next step we need is a whole step again. E to F is only a half step, so that doesn't work. Now we can't change E because you already checked E off down here against D, but you can change F. So to make E and F, instead of a half step, a whole step apart, we're going to add a sharp sign to F. Now we have a whole step and a whole step. Next, you need a half step. From F sharp to G is a half step, so you're good to go. From G to A is a whole step. We're good there. A to B, also a whole step. B to C, we need it to be a whole step, but B to C is a half step. Now we can't change B, it's already stuck. But we can add something to C to make that a whole step above B. We're going to add a sharp sign. And now we have a whole step between B and C sharp. Then lastly, we need a half step. From C sharp to D is a half step, so you're good to go.